Hello, everybody watching at home. I'm Mehdi Hasan. It's Friday midday on the East Coast. I am live, I believe, on YouTube and on Substack. So appreciate you all joining me right now. I figured we should have a conversation because I do a lot of stuff for Zeteo. Those of you who are subscribers, I assume you're all paid subscribers. You get a lot of emails from us showing our content. We have articles, we have podcasts. I just interviewed Bassem Youssef for We're Not Kidding, which you should have got an email about this morning, the new episode of our podcast, our award-winning podcast, We're Not Kidding. I do a lot of interviews for Mehdi Unfiltered, but we don't talk you and I enough, just directly with no one else around. So I thought, let's have a conversation about all the craziness that is going on right now. And I want to take your questions, your comments, your feedback, because I know a lot of people have a lot to say about the shit show that we're in right now. And it really is crazy. So please do leave your questions, comments. I'm going to be looking down here because I'm going to be following the chat here to see who's here and who's got stuff to say. Look, we are almost 70 days into the Trump second term, and I am someone who didn't hold back from criticizing Donald Trump last year, the year before, throughout the whole Biden presidency, warning that if Trump comes back, things are going to be bad. They're going to be really bad. I was accused of Trump derangement syndrome by the right, TDS. I had liberals even rolling their eyes saying, calm down, Mehdi, it's not going to be as bad. We survived Trump once. And I'll be honest with you, even someone who was warning about fascism and authoritarianism and complete chaos under Trump, even I did not think it would be as bad as it has been. It's exceeded even my worst expectations. We're almost 70 days in, and the damage that's being done is astonishing. When Donald Trump stood up in front of Congress and did his joint address and said, no president has done more in 4 weeks as I've done in 4 years, he was telling the truth for once, like a stopped clock twice a day. He got it right with that statement. Not in the way he thinks, but he was right overall that he has done more damage. He's made more changes than most presidents do in 4 years. That is true. Just look across the piece. Look at the federal government. Look at what's happening abroad. Look at what's happening in our name. Look at what he's doing to the courts, the media, and of course to migrants. It has been horrifying to watch what Donald Trump has done. Just think about the last week or so. Think about what we have witnessed, all of us, you and I, and those of you who are Zeteo subscribers. Again, I hope it's all of you. If you're not, go to Zeteo.com, go to Zeteo, subscribe, either free or ideally paid. But if you get our stuff, you'll have seen my colleague Prem Thakur's emails about what's happening to college students. You'll have seen what's happening to migrants. We now live in a country in the United States of America. If you're watching this globally, I know we have almost half of our subscribers around the world. I just want to make this clear. Those of you who are living in countries that are maybe not fully democratic may know what some of these scenes look like, but this is where the US is heading. We now live in a country where brown people, especially brown men, are being rounded up by ICE, by Customs and Border Patrol, by DHS agents, many of them masked, unnamed, unidentified. They're being rounded up because they have tattoos. I kid you not. The reporting done is extensive now. We have had people sent to a foreign torture camp, to a labor camp in El Salvador. We're paying the El Salvador autocrat to imprison hundreds of brown men. They're gangbangers, they're terrorists, we're told. But the evidence isn't there. There's no evidence. They're just lifted off the street, and then we find out it's because they had tattoos. But the tattoos are not gang tattoos. One soccer player from Venezuela who came from Venezuela to claim asylum here, football player, as we say in England, soccer player, had a tattoo of Real Madrid on his arm, and they sent him to El Salvador. Another man had an autism awareness tattoo in honor of his brother who has autism. They sent him to El Salvador. Another had a tattoo for his mother. They sent him to El Salvador. This is insane. And then you have the Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, turning up in El Salvador, caked in makeup, in a baseball cap, to do a photo op in front of the prison cell where these people are lined up, and not just lined up, they're stacked up, row upon row, behind her. I mean, this kind of image, I'm sorry, is Nazi-esque. People say, oh, don't invoke the N-word, the Nazis. But this is what fascism looks like. And if that's not what fascism looked like, then check out Prem's piece from earlier this week on the Turkish student, Rumeysa Öztürk, college student, Fulbright scholar. Do you know what it is to be a Fulbright scholar? One of the elite students to come here as a Fulbright scholar. She's at Tufts in Massachusetts. She's going to an iftar. Have you seen the video? Please do go to Zeteo.com and watch the video if you have not. This is a young woman in a headscarf on her own, heading out for a dinner to break her fast when 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Random people approach her to detain her. No ID. Can you imagine being out on the street and a group of unnamed men just turn up in masks and say, we're going to take you away in our car? No identification, no badges, no sirens. What are we doing here? We're watching people, young people, just being lifted off the street by men in masks. And then she's taken, 1,700 miles away from where she lives and dumped in a detention center in another state, just like Mahmoud Khalil, who was also taken by unnamed, unidentified agents of the state and dumped in Louisiana. He was taken in New York. What are we doing here? How are we okay with this? And then when you go and ask the officials, when people like me, journalists, go to the government and go to Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, then you get the gaslighting. These people are terrorists. They're lunatics, he said this week. I'm not sure if you saw that statement. Lunatics. How do we know that? Just on your say-so? You know what's really been bothering me and what I wanted to talk to you all about today is how many willing acolytes there are for fascism in this country. Fascism doesn't just come from the top. It doesn't just come from a small cabal of people who take over the government. It comes from willing people, members of the public who are happy to go along against their fellow citizens or fellow community members who are not citizens, because apparently if you're a non-citizen now, you have no rights, we're being told. That's where it comes from. So you have people, I see people online every day telling me, they are telling me every day, well, this person's a terrorist, this person's a gang member. How do you know? You take Marco Rubio say so for it? You take Donald Trump say so for it? Really? Is that the country we live in? There's no due process? By the way, I'm a naturalized citizen. We're next. Why not? If you can do it to green card holders and student visas and H-1B visas and get away with it, why not? Why not citizens? And for people who say, well, citizens have protections, how do you know? If there's no due process for non-citizens, then what's to stop them from rounding up citizens? That's the whole point of due process. If you have a claim, you test it in a court of law. If you just make the claim and expect people to believe you and do what you want, then you're a monarch, you're a king, you're a dictator. You're not in a democracy anymore. That is what we're up to right now. So just wanted to get out of the way. I haven't even started on Elon Musk and Doge and what's happening to our foreign aid budget and the kids who are dying now as a result of this administration. But I'll come to that and we'll talk about the West Bank and Gaza, I hope. Let me take some comments, questions. Simba 0017 says, I'm a naturalized citizen, I'm very worried too. It's unfortunately concerning. Neon asks, when's the conversation with Yanis Varoufakis releasing? Yes, I did speak to Yanis Varoufakis on a Zoom town hall that was just for paid subscribers. That'll come out in a few days' time. Fascinating person. Hiba Khan says the American government is losing it. Well, America is losing it. The American government has a very clear plan. It's called Project 2025, and they are doing it. They are bringing about a very clear autocracy. Stephen Merriman says, I live in Spain. We have a fascist party here. Vox 10 years ago never would have believed it. It is a global authoritarian playbook, and we're going to be putting out a video very soon about how all of this is globally connected, whether it's Vox in Spain, or the AfD in Germany, or the National Action in France, or Viktor Orban in Hungary, or Narendra Modi in India, or Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, or Vladimir Putin in Russia, or Milei in Argentina. It is a globally connected authoritarian movement that we are facing right now. This is not just the US alone. Everything we're seeing here is done abroad. When you see Donald Trump rounding up students, that is one of the first measures that an authoritarian regime takes on, to take over colleges and college campuses and intimidate young people. Also to go after union organizers. I just saw they picked up a Latino union organizer, which is, of course, another classic feature of autocracies. Go back to Pinochet's Chile. I want to take some more questions. Let's have a look. Has anyone got questions here in the comments? Ghulam Memon asks on Substack, is America still safe for the non-white population, even non-white US citizens? In many ways, no. I'm sorry to say. I hate being the doom monger, but I just want to be realistic with you. Brown people, black people, it's the month of Ramadan. I'm going to a lot of iftars. I'm meeting a lot of Muslims every night, every weekend. The only topic of conversation right now is, do you have a green card or citizenship? Are you traveling outside the country or not? Are you taking a clean phone or not? And what are you doing with your social media? All of these questions are being thrown around. People are super worried. We shouldn't have to live like this, but we are. And I do worry about, and by the way, it's not just non-white people. Of course, non-white people are at the brunt of the racist immigration government, but we have seen a German man at Logan Airport being strip searched, cold showered, forced to sit on a floor, deprived of sleep, because he won't give up his green card. And they want him to give up his green card because of a marijuana conviction that was expunged a decade ago. Like, some of this is just pure racism. Some of it is government bureaucrats trying to hit an arbitrary target. They're all scared of Trump. Trump has said you need to deport X number of people. They're just trying to grab low-hanging fruit, whether it's a German guy on a green card who has an old conviction, or whether it's an H-1B Lebanese professor who's got pictures on her phone she shouldn't have. They are going for whoever they can go for. GWB says, Hegseth has a lot of tattoos. Should he go? Great question, great question. Peter Hegseth, the United States Defense Secretary, ex-Fox host, the man who's been caught in this Signal chat this week, providing classified information on a commercial messaging app that he shouldn't have. As Zateo documented, one of the first to document, he has all sorts of Christian nationalist tattoos, crusader crosses all over his body. In fact, his tattoos were so controversial that the National Guard, where he was deployed to as a Fox host, they said you can't be part of the Biden inauguration protection detail back in January 2021, if I remember correctly. I think it was partly because of his tattoos. So yes, ironic. People would say, well, he's a citizen. Okay, well, let's see what happens to citizens next. CJEA says Biden and the Democrats laid the groundwork for this. They set the stage and got the ball rolling. So I'm going to agree and disagree with you, CJEA. In one sense, you're right. Like the obsession with anti-Semitism on campus, the lies about students being pro-Hamas, the deployment of armed police to Columbia's campus under Governor Kathy Hochul, a Democrat. Yes, Biden, Hochul, Democrats, they all oversaw that, right? The mistreatment of people at UCLA. All of this stuff did start on Biden's watch, and he was complicit in a genocide, and he did demonize Palestinians, sadly, by claiming the death tolls are false, and all of this stuff. And you had a Palestinian child, little Wadia, murdered just in the weeks after October the 7th. So yes, I agree with you, CJEA, that the Democrats laid the groundwork for this. But still, here's where I disagree with you. Laying the groundwork is not still the same thing as doing it. We can criticize the Democrats, rightly so, for enabling the fascists. And Yanis Varoufakis, the former Greek finance minister, you can watch my interview with him next week. He made this point. He said, look, the center-left allowed the fascists to come to power for many reasons. But while you can blame the center-left for enabling the fascists, let's not excuse the fascists, right? The reality is, if Donald Trump had not won the election, this would not be happening. However much you hate Democrats or Kamala Harris, there's no scenario in which Kamala Harris is picking up green card holders and sending them to a prison in another state, is picking up a gay barber who's trying to claim asylum, has a court date in April, but is sent to El Salvador where he's forcibly slapped and has his head shaved and imprisoned for who knows how long, right? The reality is right now, the only people calling out what's going on with Trump and with this fascism are congressional Democrats, whether in Massachusetts, whether in New York. It is only elected Democrats who are saying, stop this. And I wish there were more of them. Look, anyone who watches Zateo knows I think the Democrats need to be much more aggressive and combative. I think they need much better leadership. Chuck Schumer, give me a break. He's been useless. Hakeem Jeffries, not as bad as Schumer, but not what we need in this moment. But unfortunately, there is only one party in this country which is calling out the incipient fascism that we're seeing. So I agree and disagree with you, CJE, in equal measure. Mission says on Substack, is there any legal enforcement against this administration? Is it just a trust system? Great question. That's why I wanted to have this conversation. We must remind everyone about due process. Once you lose due process, you don't have democracy, right? Then it's just the dictators say so, right? If these people are violent gang members, the ones sent to El Salvador, prove it in a court of law. Even then, you can't send them to El Salvador. That's a whole separate argument. It's illegal for the United States to send people to another country, send them back to the country they came from. If they're false asylum seekers, if they're violent criminals, send them back to Venezuela or Mexico or wherever it is. You can't send them to El Salvador. But park that for a moment. Are they even gang members? Are they even terrorists? Where is the evidence? If you're so confident, you're the United States government. You have the greatest intelligence community in the world. You have the FBI. You have the multi-billion-dollar Department of Homeland Security budget. Where's the evidence? Prove it in a court of law. And all we have right now, the last line of defense against incipient fascism, are some of these judges who Trump is now attacking because, again, that's from the authoritarian playbook. You go after the judiciary. What was happening in Israel before October the 7th? Thousands and thousands of Israelis, Israeli Jews, were taking to the streets to oppose Netanyahu's plan to take over the judiciary. That's part of the authoritarian playbook. You go after the judiciary. Let's have a look at some of our YouTube comments. Will Bracken says, good morning from Tacoma. Good morning, Will. It's not the morning here anymore on the East Coast. We are looking at, I'm just going to run through some of these. So Rick Nelson says, we know the horrors. What we're struggling with is what to do about it. It's a great question. It's a question I get asked a lot. And I would say there's a lot of things you can do. Many things. Number one, don't lose hope, right? That's what the authoritarians want. They want to beat us down nihilistically, cynically, relentlessly, so that we think there's no other options. We've lost, right? That is something you can't do. Remember, there is more of us than there are of them. By the way, another bugbear of mine, since I'm having a Friday afternoon rant, people say, people voted for this. This is what the American public want. Trump won the popular vote. Let's just be very clear. Trump did not win a majority of the popular vote. He won 49-point-something% of the popular vote, which on a 65% turnout is like less than 30%. Is 30-something% of the American public voted for Trump, with my crude Friday afternoon math. Right, 1 in 3 Americans voted for Trump. That is a minority of Americans. Let us be clear. More people stayed at home than voted for Trump or Harris. Just be clear about that. So people did not vote for this. By the way, he didn't promise any of this stuff, right? He lied. Some of this stuff, I agree. He said on the campaign trail he would do deportations. You see some Latinos who voted for Trump being picked up. It happened in Northern Virginia recently. They said, I voted for Trump, but I didn't think it would be me. I thought it would be the criminal. Well, that's the problem. To some of my brown friends, brown fellow citizens, whether you're Muslim or Latino and you voted for Trump thinking it'll be the other guy he goes after. Sorry, it's all of us. We're all in this together. And that is what we should do. Don't forget that we're all in this together. Support community movements, support groups like the ACLU, support independent journalism. Hint, Zeteo.com. Support those of us who are still speaking out and documenting these injustices and holding power to account. Make sure that every day you're connecting with positive people, not just negative people. Make sure that you are taking steps to secure yourselves, your data, your phones, your security. Sorry to be that person, but just be pragmatic as well. And make sure that you don't lose sight of the fact that American values still matter, constitutional values still matter. The Constitution matters until it doesn't. So we need to make sure that the Constitution matters. But yeah, Jackson says, shit is so bad right now. No debate from me. Right? You can walk and chew gum. You can say things are bad and they're going to get worse before they get better. But you can also say, have hope. We are the majority and we will get through this. Stephen Merriman says, you should get out of there, Mehdi. Let's see what happens. Let's keep going. Simone AAA says, Stephen Miller did say he was going to scrutinize citizenship applications. We naturalized citizens are next. Interesting. A lot of people don't know this. But at the end of Trump's first term, they did set up a denaturalization commission, which was targeted at border communities. And they went after people who they claimed had either no birth certificates or dodgy birth certificates, people born in border communities in Texas and other places saying, well, prove you're American. And again, sorry to bang home the point, this is the global playbook. Go to India. In the state of Assam, the Indian government passed a citizenship law which required mainly Muslims in the state of Assam to prove their Indian citizenship. But if they don't have documentation, a lot of these are rural people, poor people, illiterate people, people living in villages, in huts. They don't have paperwork going back decades, or they've been locked up in camps because they can't prove their citizens, so they're foreign migrants now. So again, a lot of this is the global play, but we need to be aware of what is going on. Haroon says, great work. You inspire a lot of us. Appreciate it. We do need to, all of us, inspire each other. Let's have a look. What else is going on? Boyce Body Mechanic says, I have 2 tattoos. Good luck, Boyce. Let's have a look. What's it? Jules T says, corporations are helping to prop up the regime. I agree, Jules. I mean, part of the definition of fascism is the fusion between the state and the private sector in this way. And we've seen that throughout history. We see that in places like India and Hungary and even Turkey, which is fully authoritarian right now. The president of Turkey just arrested his main opposition candidate, the mayor of Istanbul. These are places where big corporations have got very close to the government, have helped take over the media on behalf of the government. And in this country, we are seeing corporations behave shamefully. Big tech firms, you're seeing Bezos and Zuckerberg all rolling over. Forget bending the knee, just rolling over. You're seeing big law firms. I don't know how many of you saw Paul Weiss, one of the most elite white-collar firms in this country, doing a deal with the White House. Say, leave us alone, and we'll do $40 million of pro bono work for the White House. We are seeing various corporate sectors rolling over for Donald Trump. And you have to ask why. These are people who can actually protect themselves. They're not a gay barber from Venezuela who is being thrown in a foreign labor camp. These are multi-billion-dollar universities like Columbia, companies like Amazon, law firms like Paul Weiss, Covington. Why are they all rolling over? Right? You guys should be the ones actually standing up for yourselves. It's so shameful to see ordinary people risking everything to stand up to fascism, but not big companies or CEOs who actually have the resources to do so. And I think we should call that out when we see it. And again, another reason to support independent journalism. I don't have to worry about a C-suite or a corporation owning me or telling me what to do or what to say. Jules says despair is not an option. I agree. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, I mean, so U2 is the handle, says, can Chuck Schumer jeopardize the fight against Trump even further? I mean, let's just talk about Chuck Schumer for a moment. This man has been in charge of the Democratic Party for decades. Well, has been in the Democratic Party for decades, has been leader of the Senate Democrats for many years now. There was a time when he was doing a good job. I'll give him the first 2 years of the Biden presidency. The Democrats in the Senate passed multiple important laws. In fact, it was one of the most productive legislative sessions in the United States since LBJ, right? Biden and Schumer got the American Rescue Plan passed, Inflation Reduction Act passed, the Chips and Science Act passed, a bipartisan gun safety bill passed, a bipartisan infrastructure bill passed. It was productive. Credit to Schumer for that. But right now, when we need quote unquote wartime leaders, people who are willing to have the fight, you have Chuck Schumer, who just rolled over recently for the Trump continuing resolution, led a small bunch of Democrats to help Republicans keep the government open, but on Elon Musk and Donald Trump's terms. He then went on TV and said, if Trump defies a Supreme Court ruling, then we're in a constitutional crisis. Well, he's already defied district court rulings, multiple. We are in a constitutional crisis. We need a Senate minority leader, a Senate leader of the Democrats, a national leader for the Democrats who understands the moment we're in, who doesn't go and tell the New York Times, well, many of my Republican friends in the gym, they think we'll get through this and they'll come back and be on our side once Trump is gone. No, the Republicans are now a fully MAGA party. It is a Trump cult. Sticking around waiting for bipartisanship only increases the likelihood of a full fascist takeover of this country. So yes, we need actual, people like Chris Murphy have been talking a good game. People like Bernie Sanders have been out on the road rallying crowds at AOC with him from the House. We need more fighters. Greg Kasar, check him out, chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus from Austin, Texas. There are some members of Congress who are putting up a fight. They need to be elevated right now. Jasmine Crockett, I know, is very popular from Texas, has been speaking up, been getting attacked by Republicans. Let's have a look on Substack, what folks are saying. I know we're live on Substack as well. Gary Thiessen says, who is behind this? Trump is too stupid. It's a great question. I'll say a couple of things. Number one, we know that Project 2025 was a Heritage Foundation project, which reminds you that all of the Republican Party is involved in this. Let's not pretend this is just Trump or just Stephen Miller. This is the Republican Party. This is the id of the Republican Party, the authoritarian, white supremacist, nationalist, Christian nationalist id of the Republican Party that has been unleashed on all of us. It was always there. And, obviously Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and David Sachs, interesting that so many people around Trump, the big money folks, are from apartheid South Africa. They have their own agenda to dismantle government and make themselves more billions and push their white supremacist talking points. Stephen Miller has been waiting for this moment all of his life. He was a kind of weird, eccentric, fringe freak, even within the Republican Party, working for Jeff Sessions back in the day. Now he's the deputy chief of staff at the White House, writing our immigration, national security, even foreign policies. He was on the Signal chat group discussing the Yemen attack plans. So who is behind this? A lot of people. Trump himself, obviously, is not a great strategist or thinker. He's often in it. I think two things drive Trump. One is ego, narcissism, making money, making himself feel good, popular, standing at rallies, being praised, surrounding himself with sycophants. That's one. And number two, he's a racist. And therefore, that racism permeates itself into government and government policy. The idea of being a racist demagogue and using whether it's Muslims or Mexicans or transgender people or gay people or black people as targets, that comes naturally to him. Remember, in the early 1970s, the Department of Justice under Richard Nixon was investigating Trump and his father for denying black people apartments in New York. That was in the 1970s. That's the first time we ever heard of Donald Trump. He turned up in the New York Times with that story. He famously put out a full-page ad against the Central Park Five, these 5 young men of color who were falsely accused of assaulting, raping a woman in Central Park. He threatened them with the death penalty. To this day, he's never apologized to them. So, black people were his target. Mexicans, when he launched his presidential race in 2015, they're sending as rapists were his target. The Muslim ban have been his target. Funnily enough, transgender people weren't his target, but look how effortlessly he just switched Suddenly in his second term, you never heard anything from him in his first term about transgender people. Second term, it's all transgender this, that, and the next. So he's very good at targeting minorities. But to go back to the question from Guy, like, it is a global playbook, right? But Gary Thiessen, one thing I would say is Trump is too stupid. Thank God for the stupidity of these people. Because I firmly believe that if we had smarter fascists in charge right now, we'd be finished. The only reason we're surviving right now is because they're so incompetent that they invite a journalist from the Atlantic onto their signal group as they're bombing Yemen. That they keep saying things that undermine them in court, right? That they have a Doge department that is trying to dismantle the government but keeps effing up as it does so. This is Elon Musk, the great genius, who tries to destroy the government, but as he does so, he fires the people who are looking after nuclear weapons and tries to hire them back. Fires the people who are trying to stop Ebola and then tries to hire them back. Hires the people who are monitoring bird flu and then tries to hire them back. Fires the people who are manning the phone lines for veterans at the Department of Veterans Affairs and then tries to hire them back. So the incompetence is there for everyone to see. Musk's approval ratings are in the trash. Donald Trump's are. Doge's are. So that is good. That is because these people are incompetent. And Orban is much more efficient and effective at running his autocracy in Hungary. Thank God we don't have an Orban here. Let's have a look at this. Oli Pekapusi says, great name. Does this show how weak international law and the international community has been? Yes, very much so, on multiple levels. And I do want to, before we run out of time, I do want to talk about what is happening internationally. Because first of all, what Trump is doing with El Salvador is a violation of US law and international law. We have an obligation to hear people's asylum claims. That is both under international law and US domestic law. And deporting, as I say, even foreign criminals to El Salvador is not legal under any legal manual, international or domestic. I think what Trump is doing with Canada, with Greenland, I mean, he's right now threatening to annex Canada and Greenland. Under the UN Charter, that is a crime, right? You cannot change boundaries through the threat of force. And he has threatened force. He's refused to take military option off the table for Canada, for Greenland. I was the guy warning that Trump might go to war with Iran. I didn't think we'd be going to war with Denmark. The EU is now planning on putting troops maybe in Greenland, not to deter China or Russia, to deter the United States. That is where we've got to. So international law, and I don't know if you saw Mark Carney, the new Prime Minister of Canada, say yesterday, our relationship as we knew it with America is over. Astonishing statement from the Canadian Prime Minister. Interestingly, Trump today on Truth Social referred to him as Prime Minister Carney. Do you notice that? He was calling Trudeau Governor Trudeau. Oh, I'm Donald Trump. Governor Trudeau. Get it? Get it? They're going to be the 51st state. He's going to be a governor. Interesting that he called Mark Carney Prime Minister. A reminder that the best way to stand up to bullies is to stand up to bullies. That makes them back off. Interesting that Trump is suddenly giving Carney this respect. Maybe I'm wrong. Interesting. Daniel D. Woodward says blitzkrieg tactics are being used. Put a stick in the spokes. Agreed. Agreed. They are trying to flood the zone with shit, to quote Steve Bannon. Throw everything at you at once. Foreign students, H-1Bs, green card holders, Doge, dismantling of USAID, dismantling of Social Security, attacks on the press, attacks on the courts, all at once. And yes, we do need to kind of throw a very good phrase there, stick in the spokes. Jerry Adams says, when will we know Trump has gone too far? We won't make it till the midterms. At the current rate, I do worry that the midterms are too far away to be thinking about. I have Democrats saying, well, if we do this and that in 2026, okay, 2026, that is still 18 months away. We need to talk about what's happening 18 days from now, because that's the kind of pace. That's why we need, we had Pramila Jayapal, former head of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. She did an interview with me for Zateo. She said very clearly, it's time for nonviolent resistance. Think about what kind of tactics we can use peacefully, civil disobedience to say no to what is going on. Judy Phillips says, what happens if US Marshals are asked to step in when Trump defies court orders? US Marshals work for the DOJ and Pam Bondi. Normally a judge would say to a US Marshal, go take this person into custody. They're not listening to my ruling. What do you do when the president and the DOJ have politicized the whole system? US Marshals are going to have loyalty to Trump and Bondi. Let's be very honest about this. And look, we always thought this system was built on norms, on trust, on traditions, on a president going along with a Supreme Court ruling. It wasn't built for a president who says, what are you going to do about it if I don't follow your ruling? That is a big, and if we do get through all this, if we do survive all this, if the Democrats do return to power, we need some serious fixes to our system. This system needs to be fascist-proofed. It needs to be democratized. We need to do something about the Electoral College. We need to do something about the Senate. We need to do something about the ability of presidents and minority parties to control the political agenda. We need to do something about the electoral system, the voting system. We need to do something about money in politics, Citizens United. All of that stuff has to be on the table. And it's a shame that Barack Obama and Joe Biden never put that stuff on the table. Partly why we are where we are. I do want to talk briefly about what's happening in the West Bank right now. I don't know if you're seeing images coming out of Masafa Yatta, which is this area where the Israelis have turned into a military zone and have been pushing out the residents for years now. It's the subject of the Oscar-winning film No Other Land, which I urge you all to watch if you can. Find a place to watch it, because unfortunately it didn't get a major distributor here. I had to go find a cinema like an hour and a half from my house to watch it. That in itself is a reminder of what has happened to free speech in this country. It's not just Marco Rubio cracking down on free speech. It's corporations not willing to air an Oscar-winning movie. It is a movie about Palestinians struggling for their homes. It's made by Israelis and Palestinians together. It features Yuval Abraham, an Israeli journalist who teams up with Bassel Adra in Masafa Yatta, a resident activist, and they're standing up to Israeli bulldozers and demolitions. I don't know if you've seen in the last 24, 48, 72 hours, one of the makers of the film was beaten by settlers on camera and then arrested and attacked by Israeli soldiers, disappeared. The Academy, the Oscar-giving Academy in LA put out a mealy-mouthed statement defending him, or not even defending him. And now we're seeing children attacked. We're seeing families attacked. Literally, go on your social media today, Masafa Yatta is under attack. Think about this. These are people who are not in some faraway place that you don't know what's going on, that, oh, we don't know what's happening. There's no media coverage. We can't get in there. It's not like Gaza, where Palestinian journalists are giving their lives trying to air the crimes, but Western journalists can't get in. This is Masafa Yatta, which was just in an Oscar-winning movie. And yet, the Israelis are happy to go and beat the people who were in a movie that the world saw on stage just a few weeks ago. If that is not impunity, I don't know what is. That is Israel saying, we don't care. You can make an Oscar-winning film. We don't care. And why don't they care? Because they have the backing of the United States government, whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump. They know the US government has their back. And it's only going to get worse with Trump. Sorry to make this point, and I made this point last year. You have Israeli politicians from Bezalel Smotrich's party going on Channel 4 News last week saying Biden made us feed Hamas and fight Hamas at the same time. Trump won't make us do that. We can do whatever we want with Trump now. This is what we are now going to see. We just saw 700 people killed in Gaza, 200 children in 24 hours, the biggest child massacre since the genocide began. The biggest child massacre in one day since the genocide began, 200 children killed. That was Benjamin Netanyahu with Donald Trump giving him the green light. So again, these people are interconnected. This is a global movement. What is happening at home affects what is happening abroad and back. And by the way, God help us if we can't live in a country where we can't criticize a foreign government. That is what Israel is to an American citizen, a foreign government. The idea, and I urge you all to watch this week's We're Not Kidding that just dropped this morning, our podcast. You can watch it on Zateo. It'll be on YouTube in a few days. You can listen to it wherever you get your podcast. Bassem Youssef, who is a fellow naturalized citizen like myself, makes that point. He says, I came to the US because I couldn't criticize my own government in Egypt. Now I'm in the US, I'm not allowed to criticize a foreign government. It's not, you can criticize the American government, but you can't criticize a foreign government. That is an insane situation to be in. That is what we must push back against. We cannot allow the US government and the Israeli government to weaponize Jewish fear, Jewish pain, Jewish security, legitimate Jewish concerns and fears, and use that as a battering ram against the First Amendment. That is not acceptable. We must push back against that. I do want to wrap up with some comments from YouTube. Let's have a look here. Pastor Joint Podcast says, why does Israel mean so much to the US? It's a great question. Will the US courts give in, says Mansour. That is a $64,000 question. A lot of these judges, like Judge Boasberg, who Trump is attacking, have held the line. And, you know, hats off to those people, because they're getting death threats. They're getting pressure like no one's ever seen. Jules T says expand SCOTUS. Completely agree. Let's have a look here. Is that the movie that won the Oscar? Yes. All right. Will AIPAC be registered as a foreign agent? That's another discussion we had recently with two former Biden administration officials. You can go to Zateo.com and watch that discussion. I would urge you all, if you're on YouTube in particular, I know some of you are watching on the Substack app, but if you're on YouTube, I know you consume Zateo content via YouTube. We're going to be bringing in a membership scheme soon for some of our more loyal YouTube watchers. If you enjoy these chats, please do leave comments in the chat, leave donations in the chat, hit the bell so you get alerted to videos like this. If you're on Substack, please make sure you're subscribed. If you're on YouTube, head to zeteo.com, become a subscriber, support independent journalism, because as I said before, a free press is not free, right? We are spending money to try and do research and investigations and analysis and shows like this so we can have these discussions. Do support what we're doing, because as I say, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but it's a very long and dark tunnel right now. We will get to the end of it. I have no doubt in my mind, but it's going to be a struggle, and it's going to take all of us, whether we are activists, whether we are politicians, whether we are journalists, whether we are members of civil society, whatever you do, students, we're all in this together. So at home and abroad. So please do keep supporting Zeteo. This may have been a little rambling. I tried to take some of your questions. I just wanted to get stuff off my chest, to be honest, on a Friday. I've been feeling furious about the gaslighting we've been seeing. So if you want more chats like this, let us know in the chat on Substack. If you want to see more of this, I'm happy to do more lives, take more questions, have more conversations about the news of the day. There is a lot to cover. Appreciate you all. Don't be gaslit. Don't let them gaslight you. Thanks so much. See you all soon. Do subscribe to zeteo.com.